Testing 1, 2, 3. Good morning, Mr. Bendel. How are you?
Recording in progress.
Yeah, no, I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way. Ready? Let's call this meeting to order, please. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Trustee Santos, would you mind? Your last meeting, mouthful of food. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Please start with any announcements. Roll call, please.
Thank you, Mr. Knox. This meeting is being held virtually and in person, so I would do a roll call of all the trustees to confirm attendance. Ms. Durazo?
I'm sorry, he was helping me out with the IT stuff. What was the question?
Present.
Present.
Yes, I'm
It's
present.
an easy one.
Here I am. That's an easy one.
Ms. Gray? Mr. Moore?
Here.
Mr. Jason Green?
Present.
Ms. Martin?
Here.
Mr. Santos?
Here.
And Mr. Knox?
I am here. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Nicole Mee from the Board of Investments is also joining us today. Staff participating in the meeting include Chief Executive Officer Santos Kramen, Deputy CEO Luis Lugo, Assistant Executive Officers JJ Popovich and Laura Guglielmo, CIO John Grable, Information Security Officer Chait Erande, Chief Information Technology Kathy Delino, Chief Audit Executive Richard Bendel, Chief Counsel Steve Rice, Senior Staff Counsel Allison Barrett, Compliance Consultant Rebecca Walker from Kelpin and Walker. Internal Audit Staff include Leisha Collins, Nathan Amick, Reba Tafoya, and George Lundy. Audit Committee Consultant Larry Jensen. Trustees, please use your raise your hand Zoom option to be placed in queue. At this time, we all ask that the meeting participants be muting their mics until you're ready to speak, and now we may proceed with the agenda.
Thank you very much. Our first order of business is the election of Audit Committee officers. In the absence of last year's Secretary and Chair, I will be conducting the elections for the 2024 Audit Chair, Vice Chair, and Secretary. During the election for each position, I will ask for nominations from the trustees. As these are nominations and not motions, no second is required for a nomination. Are there any questions before we begin?
I nominate Trustee Martin for chair.
Nomination for Trustee Martin for Chair. Do I hear any other nominations for Chair? In the absence of other nominations, Ms. Martin will serve as the Chair of the Audit Committee. Moving on to Vice Chair. Do we have any nominations for Vice Chair of Audit
I
Committee?
nominate Wayne Moore.
Thank you. In the absence of any other nominations, Mr. Moore, thank you. Be our Vice Chair for the Audit Committee. Last but not least is Secretary of the Audit Committee. 3 for 3.
Nominate Vivian Gray.
Thank you, Trustee Santos. In the absence of any other nominations, Ms. Gray will serve as our Secretary for the Audit Committee. Okay, Ms. Martin. Chair Martin.
In regards to item 4A, B, and C, we don't have anybody joining us virtually at this time.
Thank you. So we're moving to the next item, approval of minutes, opening the floor for discussion or motion to approve.
I'll move approval of the minutes.
Second.
Okay, thank you.
Miss Martin? Yes?
Yes.
Voting yes on the minutes.
Oh, yes, yes.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Mr. Santos?
Yes.
Miss Gray? Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Durazo?
Aye.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously.
All right.
Okay, next item.
Now I can say thank you, right? Okay. Public comment? No public comment at this time. Okay, thank you. So we move to non-consent items. The first item is proposed 2024 Audit Committee meeting updates, and I will turn over to Richard Bendel.
Good morning, Madam Chair and trustees. Welcome the new year Audit Committee team. I look forward to working with you this year. So attached is a proposed memo with your charter attached, which requires that we meet at least, the committee meet 4 times a year. The proposed dates for the next 3 meetings are on the front: June 20th, September 19th, and December 12th. If there's any concern with that, your calendar for those months, the board calendar for those months is also attached to the memo.
Any discussion? Okay. Approved.
Move approval.
Move approval. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Santos made the motion, Mr. Moore seconded. Ms. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Mr. Santos?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Aye.
Mr. Raza?
Aye.
And Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously.
Okay, second non-consent item is internal audit proposed fiscal year 2024 to 25 budget requests. Mr. Bendel.
Yeah, I don't have a presentation for this, but the recommendation is that the audit committee approve the proposed internal audit fiscal year 24-25 budget request, and upon approval, direct staff to include it in LACERA's administrative budget for board approval. We have Ms. Guglielmo, who is oversees the budget process, to address any questions you may have as well. The IAA standards, Standard 2020, require that the audit committee, that the chief audit executive communicate internal audit's plans and resource requirements to the committee for approval. I have attached the proposed budget as well as a high-level draft version of internal audit's audit plan for fiscal year 2024-25. We're unable to provide the final budget or audit plan for this year because we started our risk and audit planning process at this meeting, which I'll be talking about a little further on in the meeting. But we've attached a framework of that meeting with some of the low-hanging fruit included. The stuff that we know has to be done on an annual basis is in that framework of that audit. And as we develop that, and when we bring it back at your June meeting, it'll include, it'll be a well-designed audit plan proportionate to the amount of staff we expect to have it for the year. As far as the budget presented for your approval, it is materially unchanged from the current year's budget. We are not requesting any additional positions, which would be at the discretion of the committee. We have a budget for 11 positions and are actually in the process of working with HR to fill the 3 vacant positions, 2 seniors and 1 internal auditor position. Any changes to the salaries and employee benefits portion of the budget relate only, and there may be some changes between now and the budget that's presented to the Joint Operations Committee in April. But those would only be non-discretionary to the Audit Committee, such as step raises, COLAs, changes in benefit costs. The S&S budget is also very much the same as the current year's budget. The only change was an increase in the budget for your Audit Committee, for the Audit Committee consultant, Mr. Jensen. He brings a breadth and depth of knowledge in the area of risk management and compliance, which staff hope to leverage his experience as we develop that in internal audit, the risk management, enterprise risk management, and the compliance function as well. Further, the biggest item on the S&S budget that I bring your attention to is the $650,000 item, the line item for external audit services. This is we use this for the pool of external firms that we have. Your committee approved a pool. I think we'll be bringing back that pool. It's been about 3 or 4 years, so I think after 5 years, we'll bring it back and refresh that pool of auditors. But we draw upon that pool to hire external resources in areas where we lack the expertise, so we need further independence to perform the review. There's a number of different projects that have been done. Most recently, we've done HR reviews, external penetration tests on the IT side, and we plan to probably at least 2 to 3, maybe 4 projects will be on the audit plan that we bring to you in June. We'll draw from that pool. $250,000 of that is reserved for the external audit by Plant Moran, your financial audit that's performed every year. So at this time, I'll stand for questions or ask that you approve our budget.
Move to approve and direct staff to send to for board approval.
I'll second.
Then I just want to, comment on, excellent job on, not much in the way of an increase, just with that. I mean, good, excellent work on that, just a little bit extra for the consultants and the external stuff, so.
Trustee
Appreciate
Santos has a question.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Santos.
So with regards to the vacancies, how long those vacancies been open?
Well, it's a difficult. There is a report in the file of that, but it's essentially we've had a recent retirement at a senior level, so we did have somebody filling in. So the two seniors, as you know, Mr. Vong went to the systems division a few years ago. I would say, so one of the seniors, we've had a vacancy for 3 years. The other one, we've just had a vacancy for a few months. And the internal audit position has been vacant since Mr. Amick got promoted to senior, and that was about 2 years ago. So it's been a while. We understand the organizations, had a priority to hire in other areas, but they have now informed me that we are on the list to hire. I'm updating the job duty statements. Ball's actually in my court. I need to update the internal auditor position, and we're moving ahead with that recruitment. I expect that we'll be underway on that in the next month or so.
Since this committee is independent, I mean, I'm surprised. I mean, everything falls on you in terms of recruitment and hiring. Isn't that correct?
Well, it falls on me. I mean, ultimately,
Yes.
we
So-
do the hiring, but we work with the HR. Yeah.
Right, but why is taking 3 years for one position and 2 years for the other position? It's just unacceptable from my perspective. We need to start filling these positions. I know there's a shortage of CPAs, right? Do you know that, or you don't?
I don't know that, to be fair. I haven't
Hey,
I haven't been in the market looking for people for a while, so I hope that's not a problem with that.
You say you've been in the market looking
I
for
have not
people?
been in the market
That's
looking.
it. I mean, that's the concern that I have.
Yeah.
Is that this committee is supposed to be independent. It is very important that we have full staff in this committee, so that way we can do the work of this committee. So I'll encourage my colleagues here. This is my last meeting today, but I expect, because I'm a member, I expect that your division, you independent, you need to get the staffing taken care of. I don't know, perhaps it will be a good idea to hire a headhunter, since it's 3 and 2 years that you have failed to hire somebody. Maybe to think about that. Hire a headhunter, we had to do that in the Board of Investments. But we need to fill those positions.
Mr. Santos, if I may, Madam Chair, I think part of the challenge, I think it was a little bit, I want to be clear to the board, to this committee, that one of the positions, the two senior positions, were unable to be filled. One of the positions was filled with someone until recently due to a retirement. The other position was filled by Mr. Fong, who, while he was assigned to another role, we weren't able to backfill that position. So it hasn't been sitting with no action for 3 years. It has been something that we have asked that the internal audit use their external resources in order to address the gap in that staffing while that position was reassigned. But it is actively being worked on now. It is whether we use a headhunter or our own internal staff, and I think our own internal staff will have no problem attracting and recruiting for these positions. We need to understand clearly what the job scope and responsibilities are for today's needs, and that's what Mr. Bendel is working on right now. And the HR staff is assisting him with that. And we'll, as soon as that's done, we'll be ready to recruit to fill these positions. If we have difficulty recruiting, we will come back to the chair, to the boards, and explain that. But I don't think we're going to have difficulty, even with CPAs. We really didn't have difficulty attracting individuals to our accounting series we had difficulty attracting people with investment experience to the accounting series, but we didn't have trouble getting applicants. So I think that I'm optimistic that we will be successful in our recruitment.
Yes, I mean, my two kids are CPAs, and their firms are having a difficult time recruiting CPAs. And there was an LA Times article about 10 months ago that talks about exactly about that. That is a shortage of CPAs.
There are.
So exactly. So maybe perhaps as part of the evaluation of how we're going to recruit or fill these two vacancies, we look at the salary, whether or not we are being competitive with the private sector. Because this is a very important committee that needs to be staffed accordingly, and we need to pay the staff market rate or better in order to be able to recruit and retain our people. Thank you.
CEO Santos, yeah.
Yes, I just wanted to mention that I believe that the internal audit folks have been quite productive in terms of using not only the existing staff, but also leveraging the outside consultants. And so I don't want you to leave with the impression that there's something that's falling through the cracks, because we've managed to elevate the number of audits over the last couple of years or so. And so we hear you loud and clear. Hiring is probably the most important thing that we do. The talent is important, that we have not only internal talent, but also the external talent as well, that we make sure that we hire the best and the brightest, both on the consultant side as well as on the internal staff. And so we are committed. We have raised the internal audits level. I believe they're at level 1 now. And so now it's just a matter of us getting through the paperwork and then going out and hiring folks that will do right by LACERA.
And what about the salary? Do you think that we are competitive, or should you, or actually, I'm kind of confused, because this is an independent operation here. I don't know why the CEO is speaking up on this issue, because the whole idea of making this division independent is so that way they can operate independent completely. So
Well,
help me understand that.
I'll help you understand. So the CEO is responsible for all the resources that are dedicated in human resources, as well as FASD. We support Mr. Grable in his efforts. He also has to go through the civil service process in order to hire individuals. The fact that the audit division is independent, they are independent. I don't get involved in the selection of the individuals that Mr. Bendel will select. That is completely independent. But the apparatus that we have to use in order to hire folks, that is under my purview. And so there were some decisions that were made because of the need for investment staff, the need for attorneys, the need for our FASD folks. So the audit committee's needs in terms of human resources, we felt that we were appropriately providing them with the resources they need from external consultants. And now we're at the point where we've gotten to that particular point where we could now start looking at and recruiting individuals to hire for Mr. Bendel. And so they will be on board very, very soon.
So this budget reflects the increase in cost because we need to hire outside CPAs to do the work? Is that included in this
Well,
budget?
it's always, the committee is, we had that budget for the external audit resources, and we'll continue to have that budget. And if you recall, the committee wanted to have a contingency amount there so that you didn't have to go back to the board if anything came up. So we have that. We don't always use all of it. We have the 650,000. I think last year we used about 450,000 of it, but it's built, there's a built-in contingency there. And just to clarify on the, administratively, we do report to Mr. Santos, to Mr. Kryman.
You don't report.
I'm looking
to
at
me,
you.
report to
I'm looking at you. Sorry, that's confusing. But administratively, we report. The dotted line is to the CEO. We report functionally directly to the audit committee. So you know, on the hiring side, we are, you know, we're part of the organization. We go through that process. But I appreciate the committee's support. I appreciate the executive officer's support, and we will get those positions hired. It's not only CPAs. I mean, certified internal auditors are critical to internal audit. They don't have to be a CPA. We have some staff that are CIAs. Certified information systems auditors. We'll be looking for somebody who has a strength in investments, a strength in risk management, and a strength in investments, risk management, and on the IT side. You know, losing Sami Vong, who was very strong on the IT, is I think great resource to have in our systems division, but he certainly was, you know, I don't know, we'll be able to replace him. That's one area where I think, you know, we could look at down the line, how competitively on the IT audit side, are we competitive there to attract somebody? I'm not sure, maybe, but anyway, I hope that clarifies a little bit.
Yes, thank you very much. And I don't want to belabor the point. I will strongly suggest that you start thinking about in terms of the salary for that particular classification that you might think. So that way you be ready to go when we need to take action. So, thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Santos.
Trustee Moore?
Yeah, I had the same concerns that Mr. Santos had about staffing. My perspective, though, was we have 11 staff, 1 administrative, 10 professional, and we're increasing the scope of work this year based on the budget by 20% to address the enterprise risk management scope that's going to be layered on top of the scope of work you already have. And you have a 30% shortfall in the authorized staffing. So that means you only have 50% of the staff. This is just my perspective. That means 50% of the staff to do your work plan that's increased over last year. So therefore, this is a critical issue to get the work done that you're gonna have to get done this year. The regular work and this new enterprise risk management project. So I was thinking that sometimes you can't hire 30 home run hitter or, you know, a passer with 120% rating. You know, you may have to grow your own, or you may have to bring substitutes in. And there are other ways to do that other than just relying on consultants.
Sure.
You don't have to go hire 2 seniors. You can go hire an auditor and train them up. We have excellent accounting programs at Cal State LA and Cal State Long Beach. We can take our intern budget and start bringing some interns in here to help familiarize them with our environment and start creating our own pipeline and connections. So 10 years from now, 5 years from now, when we have these kind of increases in responsibility, we have pipelines already set up. So let's start thinking longer term about how we deal with this dynamic, complex environment that we're in. And when we start really getting into this enterprise risk management plan, that's going to demand a lot more of our time. So we ought to be thinking about those methods of growing our staff right now, so we're not in this kind of position again.
Right. Thank you.
Trustee Green?
Yeah, echoing what both my fellow trustees said, I mean, we talked about this at the last meeting, and yeah, 30%. You guys are doing more with less. And the first, the succession plan, I think, is really what we have to, Mr. Moore is alluding to, like, you're gonna be, who's gonna replace you right now? Or if you call in sick, we don't have the depth. My first question is, are we falling, are we being burdened or hobbled by the ordinance position authorization debacle going on are we being limited by CEO in hiring these ordinance positions and filling them?
The only thing there, I think my position was on that issue with the county, but besides that, nothing else was affected.
So we'd have to overcome that if you ever decided to hang it up. But
I think it's something that, that you would want to address. I'm not going to benefit from it. I'll be gone probably before that benefits me. But I think when you're looking out in the market to replace me, and I think certainly we do have a deep team internally. I was out last year, or time flies, was the year before, with the health issue. I missed one of the meetings. I mean, probably one of the best meetings ever, so.
I know the feeling.
The team is great, so
Yeah, and that's the thing, you guys are operating, we can't, there potentially could be burnout, We don't want to exhaust people, our staff. We want to encourage, a healthy environment and have the ranks full so that, someone's not having to take another, piece of the pie to handle it. And like Mr. Moore and Mr. Santos said, we have to be proactive and not reactive to these things. And and my concern obviously is, that if there's an issue with, another entity limiting your ability to fill staff. If it's an environmental thing, that's understandable, but, and we would want to be aware of that, so.
Yeah, no, we've had great success hiring when we have hired. We've had tremendous success. And there's a certain amount of turnover on the team, which I think is healthy. We've had somebody, Catherine Ton went to the investment office, Mr. Vong went to the IT department. And I did have a concern at one of the meeting before, the one before that we were going to run into an issue if we lost anybody else. I'd be,
Because you guys are so small, like one
we
person.
we at that point where to replenish the pipeline and for succession planning at all levels. This is the right time, and I definitely appreciate management support, and we plan to complete that hiring or start that hiring within the next few weeks.
Excellent.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, no further questions, then do I have a motion to accept and file report? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick comment. First of all, it's great to see the support and the encouragement from the board and with regards to recruitment, and it looks like you have a pretty ambitious plan here. And I noticed that you're going through your risk assessment as well, that you'll be bringing back your final plan in June. And so if you just keep us posted I think it'd be good to keep the board members posted. Do you have sufficient resources to accomplish the plan? And as you do your risk assessment, are there significant risks that we're not able to address as an organization through your current budget process and through your current staffing? And I think that would be of interest to the committee to know. And if there are risks that we can't address with staff, then how do you plan to address that? So I think that would be very great, but it's good to see the encouragement and the support that you get for recruiting. And it is tough to recruit auditors with information technology investments and enterprise risk skills. So
Yeah.
If you need any assistance going forward or anything, just let me know too.
Thank you, Mr. Jensen.
So we have a motion and a second. Mr. Green made the motion, Mr. Knox made the second. Ready for roll call? Yeah. Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Mr. Santos?
Aye.
Ms. Gray? Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Raza?
Aye.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right. Ready for our third non-consent item is Bank of America wire transfer audit.
Good morning, Chair and trustees. It's a pleasure to be here. A lot of, not a lot, but there's some new faces to the committee. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. We have some returning members. It's a pleasure to see you again. And a couple of short timers. So congratulations. Bank of America wire transfer audit. Yes, that was me. Next slide, please. So the wire transfer process with regards to Bank of America is performed jointly by the Investments Division and our FASD Division. This was an assurance engagement, which means we examine evidence and independently assess the risk and controls related to the process. I'm happy to report this was a clean audit. There were no findings and no reportable conditions, and we gave it our highest possible audit rating, which is satisfactory. That's as high as we go. We're curmudgeons like that. Next slide, please.
Uh,
A little bit of background with regards to the process.
They made a motion.
All right.
Oh,
So,
pardon me.
Mr. Moore made the motion, Mr. Knox seconded, ready for roll call?
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Aye.
Mr. Santos,
Yes, thank you for your presentation.
Thanks,
Ms.
Nate.
Gray, Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mrs. Durazo,
Aye.
and Mr. Knox.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously.
Okay, our last non-consent item, procurement of goods audited with Gabriel Tafoya.
Good morning, Madam Chair and trustees. Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and trustees. I will be providing an overview of the procurement of goods audit. The procurement unit plays a crucial role in our organization by purchasing goods necessary for its operations. Next slide. Internal audit uses 3 evaluation ratings: satisfactory, opportunities for improvement, and unsatisfactory. For this audit, we assigned an opportunities for improvement rating, signifying that we have identified specific areas where enhancements are needed. Overall, the procurement unit demonstrates adequate controls in managing the procurement process. The internal controls were generally efficient and effective. Next slide. LACERA operates a centralized procurement unit within the Administrative Services Division. This unit is responsible for acquiring and purchasing goods and equipment on behalf of the organization. The objectives of this audit were to assess program compliance with LACERA's policy. The audit scope encompassed a review of transactions that occurred between July 1st, 2022 and June 30th, 2023. Specifically, this audit focused on the procurement of goods and excludes contract operations and services, which underwent auditing in 2022. Next slide. The audit results dashboards on the next 2 slides show a summary of the audit areas tested. Next slide. The next 2 slides show the summary of findings and management responses that have been provided along with the anticipated completion dates. I wanted to point out that on finding number 4, we encountered 23 of 41 purchases that were made through sole or single source vendors. And finding number 5 shows that only 3 required procurements that went through the 3-bid process. We also noted, as indicated in the first finding, that procurement policy is overdue for revision and renewal. Along with updating the policy, our recommendations focus on ensuring that management evaluate the pervasive use of sole and single source vendors, that they clarify the criteria for doing so, and that appropriate and complete documentation is obtained and maintained to support all procurement transactions, including those to support decisions regarding sole and single source procurements and selection decisions when going through the 3-bid process. I'd be happy to address any questions that you may have on the specific findings. Lastly, I just want to thank the Administrative Services Division for their cooperation with this engagement.
I have a question on the first finding, on the training.
Yes,
So that is a finding that you've had 2 times in a row, right? Am I right on that? There was one finding that existed when you audited, and then you audited again and it existed. Am I wrong?
It may have been part of we did this audit related to services last year. Was it that, Gabe, that we had that?
2022 contract services.
In the procurement of services, it probably came up during that as well. And that goes back to the policy being updated, to the procurement policy. And they've had some turnover at the Administrative Services Division. Ricky has taken over that. I believe that they're in the process of updating that right now, so that will be addressed. It is in the process of being addressed as we speak.
All right, I think I understand. So basically, it wasn't corrected after the first finding. There was maybe some staffing issues or whatever, but
We're continuing to follow up on it, and
We'll
we
see
had
this June.
identified it here again in this audit.
okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I had a
Trustee Moore?
Yeah. For the single source and sole source procurements that were done outside of policy, were the amounts that you looked at material? Like, how much money were we talking about? And with regard to the revisions and the updates of the policies and procedures, I wanted to know what kind of framework you have for maybe the development of and the modification and update. And by framework, I mean, did you look at peer agencies, similarly situated agencies, how they do their procurements? Did you consult federal or state procurement and purchasing guidelines as a basis for policies and procedures? Can you just enlighten me on those issues?
To address the first question, it wasn't that the single or sole source were out of policy necessarily. We just, in our observation, the fact that of the 41 sample that we selected, 23 were single or sole sourced, it just appears high. It's a high reliance on single and sole sourcing.
But what I read was that the justifications weren't done.
Yeah, so from that perspective, it needs to be better documented, the justifications. So I don't know, do you have an answer on the
Yes,
on
in
the
the
dollar
event of
amounts, Gabe? Sorry.
Yes, they were various dollar amounts. Some of them were, yes, above 5,000, between 5,000 and up require, yes,
So
they
in
require
your-
appropriate
In your assessment,
justification,
is it material or not? The amount of money we're talking about.
not in the
We're
millions,
not
in the several
talking hundreds of
thousands,
thousands or tens of thousands.
tens of thousands,
Okay,
yes.
so small dollar amounts.
Small dollar
It's
amounts,
just
yes.
procedurally, things are not being done the way they're supposed to.
Yeah, it's just better justification and clear documentation on why the specific single source is being used. So we want to see just clear documentation on that.
So have you
And-
asked the administrative departments that do the procurement to hold off on single source and other I call them out of policy processes? So are they gonna be allowed to continue going the way they are until you
Yes, they-
change? Or are you gonna say, stop doing what you're doing until we change the policies and procedures?
They can go ahead and continue to do what they're doing, but the policies need to be updated to clearly provide that specific reason and those specific clear guidelines on what they're doing and how they're justifying the use of the single source vendors.
Yeah, they're not, I guess I rephrased what I said earlier. I'm not saying that they're in policy, but they're not necessarily out of policy. They just need to document better. Some of those are for resources, a lot of the single and sole source, either the IT department, and there is justified reason for using that vendor on a single or sole source basis. Sometimes it's contracts that we have, or we're buying monitors from a particular vendor because we have a relation, there's a service contract, other things. So they just need to document. Same thing on the communication side. many of the printed forms that we receive. The printer is set up, we have a relationship with the printer, but, you know, how often do we go out and perform a review of that? And I think that's one of the things we want them to look at in the policy is, even if you have a printer that you have a relationship with to print the forms, how frequently are you going back and actually performing a competitive bid process to determine that you've got the most competitive bid on getting those forms? That needs to be built into the, you know, there needs to be assurance that they're doing that. And as far as your second question, which had to do with the, or I can pause there if that, does that?
Well, if you're operating in somewhat of a loosey-goosey fashion here and there, that tends to grow over time. And so we want to pull back, and if they're going to continue doing the sole sources and the single procurements, then you got to have all the documentation in place.
I would say immediately they should be providing that on
And then
purchases
you can
going
change
forward.
the policies
Yes.
later.
Yep.
For right now, we're going to go back to doing what we're supposed to be doing.
And we can't stop the use of the single or sole source, but immediately they should be providing the appropriate documentation and justification. If they do a procurement today and they use that single source, they need to completely document the justification. So I think it's twofold. And then,
CEO Santos?
Yeah, we definitely read the finding, and we will be meeting the spirit of the finding while we move forward with making the adjustments to the policies and procedures. And so, did you want to add anything, Ricky?
I was just going to say, I don't know if Ms. Contreras is here, but as far as the second question really.
She's right behind you.
My neck doesn't work that well, so.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. It's a pleasure being with you this morning. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ricky Contreras, and I'm the Administrative Services Manager. Recently transferred to the division about 3.5 months ago. Been taking a very deep dive specifically into the policy related to procurement. Spent a lot of time with the team members there, especially as they're integrating a new tool that they recently were given called Certify AP. Some of the findings will be mitigated by this new tool because it will ensure that we are actually following our policies and procedures. One thing that I'm doing specifically with the team right now is going out and looking at other areas. So for example, ISD, Gerald Plummer, who's the head of ISD for the county, recently talked to us for a couple hours about, you know, what the county does, how they define sole source, the difference between sole source and single source, and kind of even the language around how we identify what a single source versus a sole source is. We will be clearly identifying in the criteria of the newly revised policy when you can use either one of those, and ultimately making sure the documentation is in place. In addition to that, we've been working together to ensure that we have a centralized vendor management process, which will mean that administrative services will be responsible for ensuring that all solicitation methods are appropriate for the different thresholds that we have when we're procuring a good or a service, and whatever contract or PO needs to be completed are done in alignment with the policy and the procedure. So rest assured that within the next 3 months, our team will have everything in place, and by the time we come back in June, we'll be able to hopefully update you all with we're good.
Be looking forward to that report.
Absolutely.
Congratulations on your promotion.
Yes, well, I don't know if it was a lateral, but it's been but it's been my pleasure doing it. And I will tell you this, based on my observations, the administrative services team has done an exceptional job of working. This is a committed group of team members who are truly knowledgeable in their area, in their respective areas of expertise. They have worked diligently with, you know, a high vacancy rate, but we're going to shore that up very soon as well. So let me tell you that I'm appreciative of all the support I've gotten from human resources, from internal audit, from the executive office, from FASD. There is not a team, it's from systems. I hope I don't leave anybody out because everyone has done a great job of supporting me as I go through this transition and, preparing us to ensure that admin services, which is the backbone to making sure that we all get things done needed to serve our members, have what we need, and that we're gonna have our policies and procedures in place to execute at a high level.
Okay, thank you.
So lateral, there was no wage increase at all. CEO.
Just the joy of working
Okay.
with, in public
More
service,
experience.
yes.
I have one more question. Can you explain to me when and how internal audit will go back to verify and focus? I just think this is an area that might need more oversight, and I think that you have a plan for that, but when is audit gonna go back in to determine what's been done by fiscal?
We have a recommendation follow-up process in which we monitor each of the
Right.
findings, and we work with procurement management, administrative services management to follow up on each of those findings on a monthly, actually on a weekly
Oh,
basis,
got it.
and then on a monthly basis. So we'll follow up on that and report back.
Thank you.
We'll be reporting back at your next meeting on those. I think all of them are due to be completed by June 30th, so.
Good. All right, any more discussion? Motion to move?
We need a motion?
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Moore made the motion, Ms. Gray seconded, Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Aye.
Mr. Santos,
Aye.
Ms. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Raza,
Aye.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously.
I'm sorry, what is the action item? We just received and filed it?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving to reports, starting with 2024 Audit Committee orientation.
Good morning again, Madam Chair and trustees. Just pausing for a motion real quick. No? Okay. Continue. Next slide, please.
Here we go, motion to adjourn.
So for some of the returning members, this is the orientation, obviously is a re-education, I guess we could say, or, in bringing to your attention again. For the new members, the purpose of this presentation is really to inform you of your roles and responsibilities as trustees on the audit committee. And these responsibilities and roles are laid out fully in your audit committee charter, which you can find in attachment A. We'll also be discussing internal audits roles and responsibilities, and they are laid out in our charter, which is attachment B to the presentation. And lastly, we'll be discussing the Global Internal Audit Standards as published by the Institute of Internal Auditors, otherwise known as the IIA, as they are the governing body for the profession. They recently released new standards that will be taking place or becoming required effective in 2025. And we'll be discussing those in a little bit more detail throughout the rest of the meeting. Next slide, please. The purpose of the audit committee is one of governance, particularly oversight. As you can see here, you have 4 key oversight areas. That includes the oversight of the internal audit activity, which is me and my colleagues, as well as the external audit activity, our external auditors, which internal audit manages and works as a liaison for all of those projects. You're also responsible for the financial reporting process, which is the annual audit and compilation of LACERA's financial statements. Next slide, please. There are 5 key principles of the audit committee, as you can see here. I would like to let you know that those principles align with both LACERA's Code of Ethical Conduct as well as the IIA's Code of Ethics. I would really like to highlight here independence and objectivity, which Trustee Santos has already alluded to. It's really the cornerstone of internal audit and this committee. So that's a really key requirement there. Next slide, please. Thank you. A little bit of clarification with regards to definitions. The IIA standards often refer to the board or the boards. In LACERA's specific situation, when the standards refer to the board, they're referring directly to this committee. The audit committee charter, as I mentioned before, it lays out thoroughly all the roles, responsibilities, and authority that the audit committee has. It establishes the committee's oversight role and identifies those oversight activities which you're required to perform. The audit committee charter is reviewed every 3 years. It was last approved jointly by the boards in 2021. We will be starting a project in June of 2024. Pardon me, in June of 2024 to realign the audit committee charter with the new standards. And we will be bringing that to your committee in the latter half of this calendar year. Richard?
So I'll be playing the part of Christina Logan today. She wasn't able to make it, and hopefully I serve her well in this regard. Just back to that last slide, I think of emphasis, and Nate talked about the audit committee charter, but for those of you that are returning to the committee or new to the committee, take a look at the charter, read through it. We will be bringing that back for revision at your June meeting, but really familiarize yourself with the audit committee charter, and feel free to reach out to me or anybody on the team. Reach out to me if you have questions about it. So that is really the document that governs your roles and responsibilities. Also, I think in the meeting, and we didn't attach it to the charter here, but in the meeting, the one where we talked about the meeting, the 3 meetings, there is the calendar that's associated with the charter, that for each section in the charter that you have responsibility, it lays out at which meeting various areas of the charter are administered. Yeah.
And may I add, it's a fairly quick read. It's about 7.5 pages of content. Should take you no more than 15 minutes.
Next slide then. So the audit committee consultant, this was done when we first set up the audit committee back in 2004 to be in alignment with Sarbanes-Oxley, although we don't fall, of course, as a governmental entity under Sarbanes-Oxley. It was a best practice to have a consultant on the committee, an expert for the audit committee to be able to use as a consultant. And similarly, the consultant provides consulting to the internal audit team as well. Mr. Jensen is our 5th audit committee consultant. And, each consultant brings a new perspective, or a slightly different perspective than the last. Our last consultant, Mr. Griffin, was very versed on the external audit side. He was a partner in a CPA firm and brought that discipline. Mr. Jensen brings more of a internal perspective, having worked at CalPERS and CalSTRS, both in internal audit and compliance and risk management. So he is your resource if you have any questions at all. Our next slide then. This is an overview of the internal audit department, showing you where the vacancies are. You can see that we have sort of 3 pillars. We have the 2 principal internal auditors and a team under them, and then Mr. Lundy reports directly to me, and we'll have another internal audit position that may be in that pillar. We're not sure exactly where that'll go, but I think that's all I have to say on the slide. But that really depicts and this slide depicts the independence of internal audit. What I talked about earlier, the straight line from internal audit, from me, the chief audit executive, to the audit committee functionally, and administratively the dotted line to the chief executive officer. The principles here are similar to the ones that for internal audit are similar to the ones that Nate talked about for the audit committee. Professionalism, competence, and due care, integrity, objectivity, confidentiality, professional behavior, and independence, which is highlighted. Independence is critical. Don't know what I was going to say on this slide. This is back to the charter. Is this a repeat of the one that we had on before?
No, this is in regards to the internal audit charter.
Oh, this is the internal. Thank you for that, Nate. The internal audit charter similarly is the charter that your committee approves, that internal audit lives by, and it defines our roles and responsibilities. This is also subject to review each year. With the new standards, we'll be reviewing those, seeing if they affect our charter, and bringing it back to your committee later this year for approval. This slide talks about the new internal audit standards. They fall into 4 or 5 tiers. You got the purpose, and then the 4 categories: ethics and professionalism, governing the audit function, managing the audit function, and performing internal audits. And as Nate mentioned, we'll be bridging from the 2017 standards to the the new standards, and those become effective in January of 2025. These are just some resources that we have. We belong to the Association of Public Pension Fund Auditors. It's a group that meets twice a year in different parts of the country. It's a great resource because none of us are competitors. We're all in the same industry. We face the same risks. A lot of them, some funds have different nuances. Some have internal investing, some are externally investments. Like some funds don't have investments at all. The investment function is separate. Some of them are purely just investment functions. But it's a great resource for sharing ideas on risk and audits, and then there's a number of other organizations that we participate in, and I don't know if SACA's is on there, but that's another one. So
all this, which of these outfits provide educational services, something that perhaps the trustees who sit in this committee should attend? Any suggestions there?
I don't know if any of these, I think the IAA may be an organization. I don't see the IAA up there. They may have something for trustees. I can look into that. I know there was, the trustees had attended, and maybe that's something the new trustees need to consider. I know some trustees had gone to, I think it was Harvard University, had a training on, for audit committees, and for new members on the audit committee. So we can certainly get you that information if anybody's interested.
Yes.
Otherwise, I'm sure that there may be something, and I can look into that and let you know. I'm not sure of these specific organizations, whether they have anything. I would assume the AICPA might.
Keep that in mind, because I think it's important to educate the trustees.
Absolutely.
On the duties of this division.
Yes.
And Trustee Gray has a question.
Very quick question. I know you participate at SACRS in the audit committee. I think that as a suggestion that your audit committee at SACRS should plan on a training for all audit committees of the 20 systems. I think that would be very beneficial, and it would be, very proactive for our department to do so. And also, I was going to suggest, but Mr. Santos did suggest it, was the Harvard program that Ms. Sanchez and I think a couple other audit committee members attended. And I understand it was very, very informative. But if you want to be proactive in terms of helping this committee understand, perhaps you and the rest of the audit committee for SACRS should put on a training for audit committees.
So I'm not the one that's actually on that audit committee. Ms. Collins is, Ms. Collins. So I'll pass that on to her. I think she's in the room. And for her consideration, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, yes.
Anything else?
Thank you. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.
Right, you ready for the second item?
Whew, take a breath. Yes, so
All right.
the next is the risk and audit planning. And as I talked about earlier, this is the meeting where we kick off our annual risk and audit planning process. When we talk about risk in this regard, it's actually internal audit risk, and it's for the purpose of defining where we allocate our resources, identifying the risk organizationally, and then allocating resources accordingly. According to the standards, 210 again of the IAA, the chief audit executive must establish a risk-based plan to determine the priorities of the internal audit activity and ensure resources are used appropriately to address the key risk areas. Between now and June, based on external risk literature in general that relates to the public pension fund world, as well as that relates specifically to the public pension fund world, we look at external resources. That is, we look at documentation, information that's happening just in general in organizations related to risk and audit. We look at the public. We belong to the Association of Public Pension Fund Auditors. We participate in the Public Pension Risk Forum, which is another organization that I and some of the team members participate in. And then based on risk surveys that, I forgot about the presentation. I went off on my notes. Excuse me. If you go to the next slide, please. So the process, as we brought you that framework of our audit plan at this meeting, and we'll be looking again at the cyclical known risk areas, looking at our charter, looking at past audit findings and recommendations to identify those audits that we know are the low-hanging fruit to include in the audit plan. And then based on our risk assessment, which will include sending out a questionnaire to each of the division managers, and I've included that in your charter, in your package, reviewing various documents, interviewing division managers, and assessing the risk in each area, defining where we want to spend our audit resources. We'll be developing our final audit plan and bringing it back to your committee at your June meeting for approval. This just depicts the audit universe a little bit, pictorially within the organization, and defines the four major areas: the administrative area, the member operations group, the investment area, and the executive and legal with InfoSec off of the executive office. These are essentially it's meant to show you that internal audit has purview over the entire organization, and these follow our audit plan. Our audit plan is developed around these areas, so it's just a pictorial depiction of all the different areas that are included when we review and develop our audit universe. The next slide. This is just a snippet of the questionnaire that we send out annually to the division managers, and you've got the full one in your packet again. If you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer them. But after we get the responses back, I think by the middle of April or so, we'll be reviewing those and following up with division managers for any further discussion about risks within their divisions, and using that to populate and further populate our audit risk universe, determine where we want to spend our resources and external resources as well. So I included a couple of documents in I'm not going to go into these in great depth, but these are some of the documents, surveys provided by the IAA. The first one is the on-risk survey that was provided to your committee a couple of years ago. And the second one is the risk, what is it called? If you could jump to the next slide and the one afterwards. The 2024 Risk in Focus Report. And they survey, the Institute of Internal Auditors surveys chief audit executives from around the world, and they have workshops and meeting groups to identify key risks to organizations, as well as where organizations are focusing their audit resources. And it's a good exercise for us to look at those documents. They're just an example of some of the literature that's out there for us to review. And if you can go to the next slide, I feel these were the top 10 from that Risk in Focus report that I thought were most relevant to us. And one thing about it is, many of these align with LACERA. Of course, there's a lot of movement within the organizations, within all organizations, and within LACERA in terms of what the management team within LACERA, how things are being addressed in each of these areas. And there's movement also in how internal audit is addressing these areas. And if you go to the next slide, for example, 4 areas that, I can talk about movement: cybersecurity. Organizationally, there's been tremendous movement in this area with the establishment in the last couple of years of the InfoSec group. We have an information security group now reporting to the executive team. On the audit side, we support that information security group. There's been movement there. We've got the SOC audit of the OPEB program. We do application security reviews and a number of different things. So there's organizational governance. Organizationally, from an audit perspective, we had that review performed by Weaver that looked at the maturity in different areas of organizational governance. Simultaneously, the movement on the organization side was the establishment of the strategic planning process that the boards went through and that the Board of Retirement adopted recently. So there's a lot of movement both on the audit and the organizational side in that area. Similarly, in talent management, and I think they call it human capital more recently. This is a big area of focus risk-wise for the organization. We had a long discussion about internal audit and hiring. We had a follow-up on this year's review that looking at the HR recruiting audit that was done, I think 2 years ago by Bailey, one of our pool auditors. And lastly, business continuity and crisis management. This is tremendous movement organizationally to address this risk. We've hired new consultants. We've got a continuously improving that process in testing disaster recovery. Internal audit always has at least an advisory project here, and that is if work is done, tabletop exercises, I and other members from the team participate in those. We also oversee disaster recovery tests that they're done. I don't know that there's any plan to be completed this year. I think there's maybe one at the end of the fiscal year or going into the next fiscal year, but we'll participate on that as well. So just examples of how we look at risk organizationally, and these are four key areas that we continue to monitor in the organization. Next slide, please. Oh,
in terms of risk, can we go back to the previous slide?
Yeah.
So the one after that. So
the one after, Alicia.
Yeah, we're talking about talent management. Is that? I mean, one of the biggest risks is our own people, right? So where does that fit in this evaluation of risk?
Well, I think that's retention. Things like succession planning, giving people an opportunity. I think engagement. Those are all things that we want to make sure that our people are happy and that we retain them. And I think the organization does a good job of that. I think there's a lot of effort that's been made in that regard recently too. The engagement survey that was done of staff, I strongly recommend that we follow up on that and do that on a more regular basis. I think you need to do engagement. I've talked to, I believe that's important from my perspective, that you continue to look at staff engagement to ensure that you've got your team fully engaged and connected. I think that helps to retain staff. But certainly, so it's hiring, it's retention, succession planning. That's all an important part of talent management.
Okay.
Any questions for Mr. Bendel? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So there's a few reports for information only, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. Does any of the trustees want to discuss or have a question on those?
Madam Chair, with the exception of the verbal update, I moved to receive and file reports. That would be item,
Okay.
what is it? It's 8I.
That's fine. Just moving. I'm gonna file those. Do we need a second?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, so the verbal one, well, I think that had to do with audits not done at the discretion of the audit committee or internal audit. I have none to report.
Okay. Now we go to the bottom here with consultant comments from Mr. Jensen.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. This is my first audit committee, like many of you, and so I appreciate the opportunity to be your audit committee consultant and look forward to working with you over the next few years. Just briefly, I do have a strong background in pension systems. I've been with both CalSTRS and CalPERS for about 25 years. But after 36 years of public service, I recently retired, and so started a little company, and this is my first opportunity to give back a little bit more and help organizations. And I think that I'd like to congratulate Madam Chair Martin and Vice Chair Moore, and on this role here because it's a very important committee that we're working with. It's important to secure the retirement for the members of the system and ensure that we have proper control environment in place and look forward to the challenges ahead with regards to enhancing compliance and enterprise risk management in the organization and being able to work with the committee on that. And there'll be several governance and policy issues that we need to work through and hopefully be able to assist the committee with those issues. So appreciate the opportunity to work with you. And I thought it was interesting that your audit plan aligns really well with those risk reports and seems like we're on track. And so thank you very much for the opportunity.
Through the chair, may I ask a question? Welcome aboard. Good to meet you. We have quite a few consultants that we retain on the investment side or the benefit side, motor retirement. But I believe this relationship here is different. So if you, in few words, can describe your task here, what it's going to be your relationship to this committee, and how you relate, or what's going to be your relationship with the staff in this division.
Great, thank you for that. With this committee, first of all, audits, risk, all kind of have information technology, all kind of have a language of their own, if you will, and we're not always familiar with that, and so my role as I view it is to kind of help the committee understand some of the issues that might come forward, put it in terms that maybe bring it up a little bit higher level. Sometimes auditors, no offense, Richard, but auditors have take a deep dive. And so my role is to help us understand the issues that we're facing as an organization. If it's very serious, what level of concern that we should have, and be able to ensure that you have any questions about the agenda items that I can help assist on and answer those questions. My role with the organization, because I do also kind of assist the internal audit unit as well. Just kind of from a board perspective, for example, I met with Mr. Bindall and some of his staff and reviewed the agenda item with them. I had a number of questions that I asked them and got some level of understanding and what they were doing and why they were doing it. And if there were issues that were, say, inconsistent with standards, or as we implement the new standards, for example, one of the things that I would want to make sure is that the audit committee is asking the right questions. So, for example, earlier, Mr. Bindall gave a presentation about his audit plan and the risk assessment process. And so my ask of him was to make sure the committee is informed of what risks are not being addressed. You're going to see risks that are in the audit plan, but it's going to be important for the committee to know what's not being addressed and what is the reason why. Is it a staffing issue, as you brought up earlier? Is it a resource issue? Why are we not addressing that risk? And so as we encounter some of those things, my role is to make sure that the audit committee is asking the right questions and understanding the control environment, the governance, and the risk management environment within the organization.
I will encourage you. Thank you for that, by the way. I will encourage you that you report to this committee at these meetings, any interactions you have with the staff. If it's meaningful, right? I mean, if it's not meaningful, yes, we met about the agenda, but it's something more material that definitely this committee should be kept informed in your relationship with the staff.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you, Mr. Jensen. The information was great, and welcome aboard. Okay, with that, we're going to move to the good of the order. And Trustee Green is not turned around in that chair, is he? So, okay. Trustee DeRazo, am I saying that right? Durazo?
Durazo.
Durazo.
Yes, thank you. great meeting you. And this is my first meeting as well for the audit committee, and I'm, gonna learn a lot, and I'm appreciative, and that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Knox,
Thank you.
last meeting.
Yeah, it's all right.
Okay. Trustee Me?
Nothing, it's just, last meeting for trustee Knott, last meeting for trustee Santos, so we're gonna miss you. And looking forward, to hear great things that you're having fun out there, living life, enjoying the pension that you're on, so we will do the part of work here, keep it going. So, that's all.
Trustee
Thanks.
Gray?
Welcome, Mr. Jensen. It's good to see you. While I am not new on this committee, I think that every time we have a meeting, we need to be refreshed, all right? And sometimes with respect to training, which I ask for all the time, and it's not just for new trustees, but it's kind of to give a kick in the butt to the old trustees so that we really ask questions. More importantly, I want to thank Mr. Santos, because you always, with a lot of vigor, demand excellence from this organization. You demand that we have the proper staffing, the proper information, the proper consultants, and we always need that. I don't know who's going to be your voice like that. I see Miss Me sometimes at the BOI meetings. She's got a voice and a force to be reckoned with. And I hope that, Mr. Santos, your ideas for our committee with respect to auditing and other committees, but with respect to auditing, are really taken seriously, particularly with staffing. I remember at one audit committee meeting years ago, there was a proposed list of actions that were going to be taken by the audit committee for that year. And then there was a list of other sort of collateral actions that you were going to take. And I was thinking, how are you going to do that? So today in 2024, after being on this board for 12 years, how are you going to do that? I think we've been screaming and asking for the proper staff that you should have. I know it's hard to find people, but we've got to figure out how are you going to do that. And to Mr. Knox, I appreciate you greatly. I'm sure that your skills at being a treasurer, you have a lot to offer, had a lot to offer. But I hope that you continue to look at what's going on at our various committee meetings, because you too will be earning your retirement as well as Mr. Santos. So I really hope that you will sometimes watch our meetings, send in a public comment. You too, Mr. Santos. Public comments are always welcome. As trustees, when someone stands at that podium and rattles on about what they want, it's not a rattling. It is literally suggestions for the committee out of, public participation, people who understand what's going on. And you too, as trustees, will understand what's going on, and you can still give feedback. And I hope you will continue to. And other than that, I want to thank staff, particularly, I forgot your name. Nathan. You did a lot of work on your presentation, and I apologize if we kind of cut you off, but we read it and it was good and we understood it. And that's the important part. If we cut you off on your presentation, it's because it was well done and we understood it. So I thank you. Thank you. And for that, welcome to the new members and goodbye to the old.
Okay, Trustee Moore?
I just leaned over to Mr. Santos, and he said, this is his last meeting, period. I said, you mean you're not gonna be at the next retirement committee meeting? No, so then I have to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about Herman, because he's been very influential on me for just being where I am right now, sitting here, because if it had not been for him, I don't know if I would even be here today. I was on the Los Angeles Fire and Police Pension Board, and I ran into Herman at a conference, and he said, you need to be in the LA Trustees Network. I'm gonna hook you up. So he hooked me up with the LA Trustees Network, and I met all of these people from a lot of labor unions, a lot of other public unions, CalPERS, CalSTRS, everybody who was a trustee in Southern California. And through that association, I got involved in the whole issue of management fees and how much money was flowing out of pension funds to Wall Street just after the crash, when seems like all the investment managers were getting paid with bonuses, a lot of it off of our money. Anyway, that led me to get involved in a whole network of activists, and I ended up going around making presentations on management fees and doing research on that issue. And I spoke to the Laborers International Union Regional Conference. I spoke at the AFL-CIO conference that was here in Los Angeles a while back. I went to 2 Committee on Workers, Labor Committee on Workers Capital meetings in Canada, in Vancouver, in Ontario. I spoke to the Food and Commercial Workers Union in Kentucky. I went all over talking about this issue and meeting all these great people. So when I got off of the board at LA Fire and Police, I said, I want to keep doing this. And that's how I ended up getting on the LACERA board, talking to my county supervisor about my background and interests. And of course, Herman pulled me along there, and we got involved with the Pacific Pension Institute. And there, I got a chance to go to India and meet the Prime Minister.
You got
I
sick.
got
You got sick when you went to India.
Reminder.
No, it was Australia. I
Yeah.
got sick, but I did get sick. Yeah, but where else did we go? We went to Abu Dhabi, and we went to South Africa, and all over trying to influence how workers' money was going to be invested around the world and for the future. And when I got off of the investment committee, Herman said I needed to get on the retirement committee. And now I'm engaged in all of the issues that are directly related and affecting the lives of our retirees and beneficiaries. Every meeting, there are issues that, bring all of this home. And so I've had a great run over the last 12, 13 years in this environment. And I have to credit him with that, because I don't know that I would have been able to touch all the people and do all the things I've done if he hadn't encouraged me, along with Liz Greenwood. She did too. So I want to thank you personally, and also recognizing all the years that you've been here fighting for workers, fighting for the regular, everyday person, fighting for the staff and diversity and inclusion and competence and getting the work done and keeping your eye on the ball. We're going to miss you. You won't ever be replaced. It's not going to be anybody like Herman again. It's just him. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, trustee, for sharing that. Appreciate it. Now, the man of the hour, the other man of the hour, but this man of the hour is going to, yeah, you have the floor.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your kind words. Appreciate it. Everything was done for the workers. And I want to encourage this division to also do what we do at the Board of Retirement and the Board of Investments, is to honor a member. It is very important that we all remember why we're here, including me, a county employee. We need to remember that we're here for our members. Very important. And it is the members' money that we manage in here. Very important to remember that. We're not here for any other reason but to make sure that the hard work that county employees do day in and day out. I mentioned this at the Board of Investments the other day. I'm going to repeat it here again. We're doing it for those people who work in the sewer department, who get into the sewer to fix the problems that the city has. We have people who are responsible for going in a freeway to pick up injured people or dead bodies. And I can go on and go on. It is very important that the sacrifice that these people make for our community is rewarded by making sure that we manage the money correctly. And that's why this committee is so important. This division right here is so important, because this committee is a checks and balances on all the other departments in this organization. Very important. And I'm happy to see that there is no personal relationship between the executive and the CEO. When I first arrived here, there was very close relationships that made me very uncomfortable. I said it then, and I'm here to say that as far as I can see, that has stopped. This division has to be able to also hold the CEO and the management accountable for. Everybody has to be held accountable for, including us. Nobody here is, like everybody's saying around now, nobody's above the law. And that is why important, because that's the only way. You know, one of the big things that I used to pride myself when I was campaigning for re-election, we don't lose a penny. We actually do, but not significant. And that's important. I remember one manager was saying that not too long ago, we were fighting for $50,000. De minimis, when you have billions of dollars, $50,000. You kidding me? $50,000, that's a lot of money for me. That's a lot of money for my coworkers. So that's the pride that we have to all take by doing what we do here. Everything is for the members and nothing else for the members. So it has been a pleasure. I've been associated with this committee for the past 20 years or so. It is wonderful to see the evolution to where we are, and now we are fully independent, and I want to make sure, that we will remain like that. Very important. And rest assured that if any management, because Mr. Crummett is here with us, but he might not be here in 2 or 3 years, just like I'm going, right? We need to make sure that we hold everybody accountable and that there is no impedance, there's no obstacles for this committee to function, because that's who keeps us honest. And I actually tell people, this is the internal affairs of LACERA. You do something, they're gonna get you, and be aware of that. So I just want to emphasize the fact that this is a very important work that we do here. And I ask my colleagues, especially the new trustees, to please take this very serious, because it is the workers' money. So thank you very much. And remember, it's Martin and I and the retirees, we will be watching. And like my colleague, Ms. Gray said, there's an open mic at the beginning of a meeting that we can always come in. So that's what I intend to do. I intend to keep my eyes on this organization, because this is my livelihood now. This is it. So I want to make sure that this continues to operate the way it's been operating. The stability is really key. We were unstable for some years. We survived all that, and here we are. Let's keep it going. Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Let's keep it going. That's the new motto, right? To your retirement and have a good one. And we'll be in touch because I'm going to suck him into another nonprofit we're working on. Okay, so it is now 10:30 and we will adjourn. In 10 minutes, we need to come back for an executive session. Yes.
I yield my time to the.
Yeah. But we know Keith is going to have a very good time in his retirement. Okay, see you in 10, those of you that are supposed to be part of it.
Recording stopped.